Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Reimagining the Proposal Center, AI as a game changer in proposal development. Thank you for investing this time with us and our industry leaders. I am Mallory Price and will monitor today's session. As a reminder for APMP members, this webinar applies toward your continuing education units for certification. As with all Shipley webinars, this presentation will be uploaded to our website by tomorrow, so watch out for that and share it with your colleagues. We have two experts joining us today. Amy McGeady is the Senior Vice President of Strategic Services and Executive Sponsor for AI Initiatives for Shipley. Amy has been a proposal manager, a proposal center director of a Fortune 100 company, a small business owner, and a nonprofit CEO and CSO. She currently serves on the APMP Board of Directors. Amy began her leadership journey as president of the Junior Honor Society in 8th grade and has the good fortune of learning from amazing leaders ever since. Mark Taylor is the managing director of Shipley UK and brings over 20 years of hands-on experience of supporting European organizations in the aerospace, information technology, and defense sectors to develop their approach to business winning. His focus is always to enthuse people about professional, complex business winning and new ways of working. In addition to his client work, Mark has driven a digital transformation program within Shipley UK. And as a reminder about what Shipley does, we are a global professional services firm. We do business development training and certification, proposal management writing and response management services, end-to-end proposal support and consulting, capture, sales, and pursuit management consulting, as well as training, certification, and career development, including webinars like this one. So without further ado, Amy, I think I have spoken enough, and I will turn the time over to you.
Great. Thank you so much for that introduction, Mallory. Mark and I are so glad to be here today to share some thoughts with all of you. We're going to take you on a little bit of a journey. So I want to preview the topics we're going to cover today. The first topic we'll cover is the difference between automation and generation. Then Mark will walk us through a really fun section on AI is real and super weird, imagining how the proposal center can grow and evolve, ways AI disrupts existing paradigms and practices, and then practical suggestions for AI adoption with proposal center stakeholders. So as we get started, we're going to assume that those of you who've joined us today have a basic knowledge of artificial intelligence. So we're not going to go through a lot of definition. That's a topic for another day, but instead we wanted to start by making sure that we all had clarity on the distinction between automation and generation. So automation, whether it's by humans or by computers, it streamlines tasks and decisions to function with minimal oversight. So, the characteristics here that we've listed: minimal interaction, a set of predefined tasks, predictable outcomes, and then the focus is really on increasing efficiency and consistency. Generative AI, on the other hand, it uses machine learning algorithms to create new content or data that didn't exist before. So generative AI really simulates that human-like creativity based on learned patterns. So throughout this talk, while we really appreciate the way that AI can be trained to automate processes and practices, we don't want to lose sight of generative AI's ability to create new content and to learn. So building on the contrast between automation and generative AI, we distinguish between an effectiveness mindset and a growth mindset. So first, an effectiveness mindset. This is about automating routine or repetitive tasks. So with an effectiveness mindset, we're focused on optimizing existing processes, achieving efficiency, maximizing outcomes. So taking things that are very routine and repetitive and trying to figure out how we can do them more quickly. Think in this case, how we can do better bids quicker. with generative AI, with a growth mindset and generative AI, on the other hand, we're really talking about how we can learn, adapt to new scenarios, tackle new challenges. So extending the scope of the proposal center. So this is where generative AI can be incredibly helpful because it's about creative tasks, generating new information, innovating, adapting, and one is not better than the other. And we want to make sure that that's very clear, but we want to make sure that while we recognize the benefits of automation and we think that it can be a very logical and natural part of a disruption journey, that it's really important to continue to really focus on that growth mindset and how we can use this new technology to be more adaptive and potentially add more value to our business development operations. So with that growth mindset, this is the lens we'll be using as we have our talk today. And it's not really just about using AI to streamline or speed up current practices. It's really about how generative AI can grow the scope of the proposal center, create new ways of working, new roles, and new opportunities. So with that, Mark, I'll turn things over to you to talk a little bit about how AI is super weird and that it's real.
Thanks, Amy. So yeah, thanks to Amy for that context setting. And I'm going to talk about, as Amy said, how it's given some real benefits, but how it's super weird. At the moment, there are many people talking about generative AI. Here's the person that over the last sort of 6 to 8 months I found the most useful and inspiring. His name is Ethan Mollick. He's an academic at the Wharton School, Pennsylvania. He's credible. Is insightful and informative, and I do recommend, if you're interested in this topic, you check him out on YouTube. His recent work is around the practical application of generative AI to knowledge work, and given the discipline that we're in here, we are all knowledge workers, and the benefits he's measured are quite staggering. So we're referencing here some work he did with Boston Consulting Group, where he worked with around 8% of their global workforce, realistic consulting tests. One group had access to ChatGPT-4, and he has some control groups. And what he found, and what his team found, the other academics he was working with, 12% more productivity, 26% faster, and 40% higher quality. I think three things to, no worries. So three things to just to mention on this particular work that Ethan Mollick has done. Number one, these are very large percentages. Just reflect for a moment how much companies spend just to acquire, just to gain 10%. So these are big numbers. Secondly, this was a robust experiment. These are academics. They're not necessarily trying to sell us anything. So they've got a control group. So I think there's some credibility around these numbers. And thirdly, these Boston Consulting Group consultants are using the worst AI they will ever have. It will only get better and more accessible with the rise of Copilot, for example. Thanks, Amy.
Okay.
So,
Mark, excuse me. I'm realizing I'm having just a little bit of trouble with this animation on this slide.
That's fine, Amy. That's okay. That's what I've talked about there is some of the real benefits, and in on a much more personal level, just reflecting on benefits within Shipley UK. We've been using Copilot for the last sort of 2 months. We've got a team of Copiloteers, and we have seen some phenomenal increases in productivity and effectiveness, particularly around the analysis of qualitative data. So those benefits having been said, what Ethan Mollick goes on to talk about in his most recent work is he talks about generative AI being super weird. And this really resonated with me. at a very personal level in terms of my use of generative AI, because this is exactly what I've witnessed. So what does Ethan mean by this? Well, he contrasts it with familiar software tools, for example, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that we're all familiar with. And with those, he talks about how we're very clear what it can do and what it can't do. Conversely, with generative AI, it just isn't like that. Because, for example, there are some very complex tasks it can do very well. For example, writing a poem, a report. It achieves these easily. And yet, there are some simple tasks where it fails miserably. So, for example, Wordle. Generative AI cannot help me with the family Wordle League. It gives me the wrong number of letters. I tell it to exclude a letter, it includes it. It also can't even do basic mathematics. So this is confusing to most humans because it's not what we're used to in software tools. Conversely, as an aside, it's very much what we are used to with other humans, but that's another topic. So this super weirdness, to my mind, can create a super steep learning curve. It can be frustrating and worrying. It can also undermine the credibility of such tools, because if we see them failing at very simple tasks, it can make us think that perhaps they can't do the complex tasks. And this can really impact the organizational uptake of such tools. So this super steep learning curve, includes the user interface. As one of our clients says, it's almost like going back to the old command line interface where you have to know the right commands to type in. So, as I've said, this super steep learning curve, that out of the box, includes the user interface. As one of our clients says, it's almost like going back to the old command line interface where you have to know the right commands to type in. Thanks, Amy. So we have two approaches. We can spend a lot of time climbing that learning curve, or thinking carefully and discover where the optimal place is for our context, constrain our use, and thereby allow us to pick up the pace and allow more people to gain the benefits of generative AI. I think this is conceptually what proprietary versions, LLM wrappers and plugins of LLMs do. They make LLMs rapidly usable and useful by discovering, constraining the jagged edge. So I think that's a starting point for our journey in reimagining the proposal center. So let's go on that journey right now. Thanks, Amy.
Okay, great. So let's start with the proposal center of today. We think that a logical starting point for using any new technology solution, including our initial work in bringing AI into our daily work, it typically starts with the effectiveness mindset. How can we do tasks and activities that are typically part of a proposal center faster, easier, more efficiently? So what we have here are, the things that are within the proposal center today: RFP analysis, outlining, content planning, content repurposing, all things that are fairly well suited to optimizing through automation. And some of the task improvements that we've identified that you can do using AI today is using AI for research, for analysis, planning, drafting, and evaluating. And these are all things that we would kind of put more in that automation and effectiveness kind of part of our journey.
So reimagining the proposal center, what we did, we took a step back and used a systems thinking approach to consider, what does a proposal center do? And how does it interact with the rest of the organization? What you're looking at here is necessarily a simplification, but we have 3 interaction points. Starting on the left-hand side, firstly, with customers and through sales. Secondly, with leadership within the organization. And thirdly, with solutioneers. And to give examples of the type of interaction that we would expect here, with sales intelligence, such as customer hot buttons, customer perceptions, and competitive intelligence. With leadership, we'd expect there to be interaction around policy decisions, such as qualification choices, reviews and approvals in line with the organizational mandates. And finally, with solutioneers, well, there's the solution options, trade-offs. And by solution, by the way, we're talking about technical, programmatic, commercial, legal, and so on. So what we're imagining here is how the proposal center currently interacts with the rest of the organization. What we can then do is apply a growth mindset and think about how can our idea of the proposal center grow using generative AI to add more value to the organization, and really importantly, how to provide more opportunity for those people who work within proposal centers, more career opportunities and more opportunity to develop their skills. Thanks, Amy. So let's look at each of these interactions in a little bit more detail. So a simple step is to use generative AI to extract and summarize information from interviews with sales. So we've experimented with this within Shipley UK and it works. Simply using Copilot to listen to a conversation with a sales lead and then transcribe it and pull out the key themes. And this is a great way of extending the proposal center and quite a gentle way as well. And I would argue that using this interview technique and transcribing and using Copilot to bring out the key themes is a much more palatable way to automate the interaction with sales leads rather than sending an email to say, please update the CRM with your sales intelligence, which can feel like a bureaucratic request. So there's an example of how the proposal center can reach out in a more imaginative way using generative AI. Now, if we switch to the leadership function, we can imagine using generative AI here as the independent reviewer, giving it roles to review from different stakeholder perspectives from the organization. We can imagine using it to collate what can be disparate and conflicting feedback, summarizing and prioritizing. These roles could also include governance roles, working within the policies and mandates of the organization. On this note, I find it interesting to reflect that generative AI has an infinite capacity on its diary. So I'd argue getting on its diary is a little less challenging than getting onto a BD director's diary. Now moving on to the third interaction, which is with solutioneers. I think this is really exciting. I think here there's a great opportunity to use generative AI to construct solution configurations and descriptions, repurposing them to answer specific customer questions and requirements. We can use it to identify and describe the trade-offs of solution options, helping customers to understand the differences between competing solutions and make informed decisions. We can also use generative AI to perform the financial and scoring and modeling for positioning and pricing to win, leading to cost modeling using organizational policies. So having spoke about these three interactions and how they may grow, what we can then imagine is this transformation from a proposal center into a business growth center as we extend the scope of the activities. And this is what Amy was talking about in terms of a growth mindset, is the idea of using generative AI, not just to achieve those efficiencies, but also to achieve the growth of the center itself.
So, if we start moving towards whether it's even effectiveness or this growth mindset, automation or generation, the reality is generative AI is really going to disrupt best practices and the paradigms of today. So, there are some things that all of you who have been Shipley fans or trained by Shipley over the years, that we're going to see is some of the things that we've preached for years really will change. So the conventional wisdom today will, evolve as this technology becomes more pervasive. So, current guidance from Shipley and others in the industry are really, be selective in what you bid for. And as we have the new power of generative AI technology, we believe that paradigm may shift from being selective to bidding everything you could reasonably deliver. And current wisdom is you create your visuals first, and then you allow those visuals to become the basis of how you write the rest of your proposal and tell your story. Well, with generative AI, really, instead of creating the visuals first, we think that the practice shifts more to starting with context. Generative AI, if you have a way of, looking through all of the information about your company, what you've currently done, past proposals, other things, you have a lot of context about you as the bidder. You can have a lot of context about the potential customer that you're bidding to. And so understanding and being able to explain that context will be probably the new starting point, as we all really begin adopting this technology. And then, once that you have that context in place, then you can create the visual and the drafting, etc. So Mark mentioned, today we all, in our review process, we try to seek out independent reviewers from within our companies, or we hire consultants. Well, as Mark mentioned, AI can become the reviewer. And you can give the AI different roles. You can have a technology reviewer, an executive kind of viewpoint reviewer, a reviewer that's looking more from that management lens. And you can give the technology different roles, just as you would do today with bringing different people with different skills and backgrounds onto your review teams. And then finally, some of the best practices of today are more linear and gated proposal development process that really gives way to spiral development and AI-enabled Agile. I know in the industry we've talked about Agile proposal development for quite some time. Well, this technology really makes that possible. So, recently Shipley released our BD AI primer, and in it we talked about how we can take advantage of automation and generation using our existing processes today, and finding those places where we can have some quick wins, where there's low risk, low investment, and start the process of process evolution. So, here I just have a synopsis where you could take a part of your existing process, figure out what parts lend themselves to either automation, if that's your starting point, or generation. And you can build prompts to do things like a Shipley 4-box or a content plan. So, and as we receive new information, we can really quickly redo steps, and we can use that AI reviewer throughout. As we get new information, potentially, redo a section of our proposal, we can have it re-reviewed, etc. One of the things we think in the proposal center of tomorrow is that there will be some new roles. And we've recommended a couple of roles that we think could emerge. So, the BD AI acceleration specialist. So recommending that teams create a new role. Now, this could be a role given to an existing member of a team, such as a proposal manager who, maintains their current responsibilities, but takes on also the role of this acceleration specialist. So someone who is a seasoned proposal professional, has a unique interest in and aptitude for AI, someone who you allow to have the time to stay up on the latest AI developments and trends. Since the technology is changing so much, for many people, it's unrealistic to be able to keep up as sort of a side hustle. So what we've seen be successful, again, it's very, very new in the places that we've seen it tried, is creating this BD AI acceleration specialist, where someone actually, as part of their job, has the time and bandwidth to keep up with the latest trends, identify places where AI can add value, and then be in a position to do some testing and some experimenting and reporting back to your larger team. Another role we have here is the flight plan leader. Earlier in March, Shipley announced a partnership with PWin AI. This is a technology provider in the AI space with technology specifically for business development and proposal development. It's the only technology solution that Shipley is currently endorsing. And as part of that technology, you build a flight plan that helps guide the integration of your win strategy into your proposal development process. And, in the case where a company is adopting this technology, a new role that could emerge would be the role of this flight plan leader. So it's some very fun things that could be happening for all of us and our career progression. And Mark, I'll turn things back over for you to start helping us walk through, how do we actually start doing, making changes in our organizations.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And you mentioned there sort of career progression. And indeed, what I'm talking about here is a progression. And what I'll talk about in a moment is how we're seeing a sort of an ecosystem start to develop amongst our clients, which embraces all of these elements, because we're all learning. So I'm going to suggest that what we have to think of is an emergent strategy of encouraging use. It's not possible to, I don't believe, to adopt like a top-down, this is the way it is strategy and roll that out. It just isn't going to work like that. So on the slide now, on the left-hand side, there's use case number one, and that is the use of accessible, low-cost LLMs such as Copilot, ChatGPT in day-to-day work, not using them on anything particularly sensitive, but just as day-to-day, co-pilots, helping us to draft emails and what have you. So that's sort of walking with AI, just getting familiar with how it works. In the middle there, we now have sort of running with AI. Now here, the use case is where we are developing very niche applications of LLMs for in-house specific use cases. So that could be, for example, creating a generative AI application that quickly repurposed people's CVs and resumes for different customers and proposals. Very specific use case, an in-house tool, and relatively easily created. And then finally, on the right-hand side, flying with AI, here we have the purchase of high-performance proprietary tools, which are applied to the most complex, or where we are really seeking to achieve ongoing benefits around effectiveness and efficiency. Now, my point here is that what we're seeing emerging is clients having this ecosystem of coexisting generative AI tools. Yes, it's a progression, but it's coexisting in the sense that an organization would have all these happening at the same time. And the benefit, I'm going to argue, there is that the learning curve is just made a little bit more gradual because people are able to become familiar with how AI works, walk with it in terms of using the low-cost LLMs. They're then able to use it in a more sophisticated way on in-house use cases. And then when they are exposed to the high-end proprietary tools, they've grown up with AI in the same way that many of us have grown up with, the applications such as Excel and PowerPoint, etc. We've grown with them, and their capability has developed, and our understanding of it has developed along with it. So I'm describing this emergent strategy as really powerful because finally it includes devolving the identification of the benefits of using generative AI to those who are closest to the work, because they're the people who are going to spot where the benefits really are, because they're doing the work day in, day out.
And Mark, one of the things I find so interesting is that, you can have this journey be somewhat linear, the walk, run, fly. You could have all of these things going on simultaneously. You could have people on your team that are using a tool and they're flying, while other people are, right now more walking. And that's can be perfectly normal right now in this time of dramatic change. So, thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Amy, and I completely agree. And all of that, it's important to point out that within that empowerment of people to experiment with AI, of course, what that has to be done within is organizational AI policy. Now, this is something that needs to be defined early on in terms of governance, playbooks, how we use AI within our organization, training, and appropriate coaching, so that people feel safe using AI and indeed are safe using it. So there is a bit of top down there in terms of applying that policy and thinking it through, but not telling people exactly what the benefits are and how they should apply it in their particular use case.
That's great. Well, if this is something, if you are someone that you are charged with or interested in how you do this, how can you embed those growth mindset principles? We have some recommendations for you of how you can infuse a modern iterative approach to reimagining your proposal center. So, one of the things that you can do is create a community of practice. So when you have a community of practice, you designate a group of people within the organization who want to share their experiences. They can, share and try best practice. They can create new best practice. They're staying up on the latest developments in AI. And, these are people that are agreeing to work together to try to help your team, your company figure out, what is the place of AI in your organization. Mark mentioned some of the ways that Shipley UK has seen some real benefits from using AI. Well, that was done by creating a community of practice, a small group of users who were really invested in trying different technologies and reporting back, what were they learning, what was going well, where did they need to adapt, etc. So another thing that we would recommend is really to embrace iterative design thinking. So encourage proposal center directors and other people who will be charged with rolling out AI in your organization is to really think with some of the core principles of design thinking. So, 4 well-known principles are having the empathy with end users, defining problems very clearly, ideating on innovative solutions, and then creating rapid prototypes. So, having that iterative testing and refinement with real-time user feedback is really critical to embedding these growth mindset principles and allowing people to have some quick wins that build confidence and momentum, and frankly, celebrate some of the failures that might happen along the way. We're not really a profession of people that like failure. We have high stakes roles around things going wrong. But, you know, when you use an iterative design thinking approach, it is important to, you know, try things out. And if they don't work, get to the bottom of why are they not working? Maybe we're solving the wrong problem. Another thing that you can do as you try to embed a growth mindset in your organization is this agile methodology. So try to shift from a linear rollout to an agile approach. So where proposal solutions, you know, are developed in sprints, when you allow for frequent reassessment and adjustment based on continuous feedback and changing requirements, you know, some of the agile methodologies that we're seeing right now is people are experimenting using AI technology just on one part of the proposal and getting it all the way through to completion, you know, from providing that context to visuals to writing, reviewing, editing, and getting a section completely done using kind of an agile methodology and seeing how that works. And all of these things really point to, you know, embedding an experimental culture within your organization. So, you know, a lot of us are used to following strict protocols. And, you know, when we share things with our executives, we want them to be really top notch. We don't, you know, create a lot of room for lessons learned and failure, truly. And so if you want to embed a growth mindset in your organization, you really have to have a culture that is celebrating experimentation. So where you have these new AI tools, and whether it's, as Mark mentioned, you know, using one of the kind of more commonplace large LLMs, if you're using, you know, bespoke technology, et cetera, is, you know, use the tools, pilot them on a small scale, figure out what lessons you learn, take the things that are successful and scale them up. And then, you know, just really encouraging people to embrace discomfort, embrace failure. You know, many of us who have been drawn to this field are perfectionists, and really right now, what we're probably going to have to do is embrace really much more of a progress over perfection mindset. And, you know, to the extent possible, with all of these techniques and principles, et cetera, what we really are encouraging is a lot of transparency, you know, helping people understand, you know, where things are, and allowing and creating space for the free sharing of concerns, of wins, even of the failures that might happen along the way. And if you're the person leading these initiatives, you know, we want to offer some advice on how you might measure progress that you're making. And some of these metrics that we suggest are pretty straightforward. So if you want to measure the progress of your community of practice, you know, one thing that you can track is skill development. Assess people's growth in their skill levels before and after introducing new tools. That will help you understand, you know, how things are going with their community of practice. But frankly, even that feedback can help people understand and feel good about the progress that they're making. In terms of a metric for iterative design thinking, you know, one critical measure is user feedback. So quantify user feedback scores on different prototypes or different solutions that you try. Measuring the success of your agile methodologies can be measured by lead time and cycle time, monitoring like how quickly items are moving from start to finish in the workflow, which might be a good indicator of process efficiency. And then in terms of how do you measure the success or failure, I guess, of your experimental culture, is really those learning outcomes, recording and assessing those actionable insights and lessons learned from each of the experiments that you do. So, you know, kind of to wrap things up, you know, our advice to you is, if you are the person, if you are interested in reimagining your proposal center, start small. Measure the impact, iterate quickly, fail forward, and then scale with confidence. You know, this really is a new frontier for all of us, and we highly recommend figuring out ways how to pilot these new technologies in controlled and manageable projects, measure how things are going, you know, if you try things, kind of go through those cycles quickly, embrace your setbacks as learning opportunities for improvement, and then, expanding AI integration after you validate success in trials. So, thank you so much for being with us today and allowing us to share some of these insights. I mentioned earlier that we have our BD AI primer available. So you can use this QR code, or you can simply go to our website, shipleybd.ai. If you are interested in purchasing this resource to use for you and your team as you continue to think through the application of AI to your work. And then, we mentioned that we have a new technology solution available with our partner, P1 AI. If that's something that interests you, again, that's on that same website, or you can use this QR code to let us know that you'd like to continue that conversation. Mallory, thank you so much for introducing us today, and Mark, for your partnership on developing this presentation.
My pleasure. Thanks, Amy. Thanks, Mallory.
Thank you all.
Thank you.